I'm based in Maynooth University, which is just outside Dublin, in the Republic of Ireland. And I'm part of, as I alluded to just now, in a semi-critical way, I'm part of the Programmable City project, which is an ERC-funded project, four-year project looking into smart cities and programmable cities and developing the notion of code space over that time, the amalgamation of code and space over time. But I'm very different to most of the people on that project. I'm a critical philosopher of technology. I'm not a geographer, I'm not a computer scientist. I come from a philosophy of technology background. The preamble of what I see after being on the project for 15 months is that the programmable city is essentially concerned with the Internet of Things. And we've heard a little bit about the Internet of Things today. We're looking at smart cities, but in order to do that, we're looking at the concretization of smart cities within objects, and that is ostensibly the Internet of Things as I see it. We're looking at these environments of continual connection and continual data production. That's how we're defining a smart city. And in order to do that, we're looking at sensors, aggregators, data brokers, commercialization, these different aspects. So we're moving perhaps from the physical to human. Continual surveillance is a given within these notions of smart city. There is no off switch in the smart city. The smart city, should it be realised, one thing I should add at this point is I don't think the smart city is possible, personally. I think it's an impossible dream. And I think also, if it was ever done, nobody would live in it. That would be the more important point. Nobody would want to live in it, and no one would choose to live in it. But those are my thoughts on it. We hear these words, and I'm going to allude to this in a little while as well. Some of the things that I always see come up in literature on smart city, and when I attend seminars and presentations by major players in this space, they talk about sentience, they talk about being informed, they talk about responsivity, they talk about safety. Those are the four key buzzwords always. The smart city is safe. You don't need to fear being in the smart city. We should reflect on that with what we've been discussing about surveillance over the last 2 days. It's responsive, because the smart city knows everything that goes on in the city. It's informed. It doesn't say who's informed, but it says it's informed. And in some notion, the smart city is sentient. You can have a sentient city, but there you go. The product of the smart city is the smart citizen, always. And we see this in continually across the information pumped out by the likes of IBM. Why do you have a smart city? Because you will produce smart citizens. If you put this, it's a causal chain being proposed here. You put all this technology in, you will spit out smart citizens. Okay. Which I'm positioned as a specific form of being, to borrow from Martin Heidegger in Late Capitalism, a specific form of acting, knowing, and understanding in the smart city. What I wanted to hear, though, is, and I've put this at the bottom of this slide, is I want to discuss what I call a dual articulation, or almost a re-articulation of the term parenthesis in terms of citizenship. So that's how I'm going to structure it. That will become clear as I go on. I just want to talk a little bit again, so I'm leading from that. We have this emergent notion of a digital citizen. Obviously, this session is about digital citizenship. This is really just drawn from my observations of players within the smart city space. I'm not drawing on any academic literature here, particularly. We have a movement towards educated citizens, or citizens educated within the smart city, and that education leads to engagement in particular ways. So people who use the internet regularly and effectively is a word used very often. If you look at IBM's education pages, they say that they will teach people using programs from IBM how to be effective internet users. They don't define what effective is any further than that, but it should not be a huge leap of logic to think that that is effective along the lines of efficiency that IBM see as most profitable to their bottom line. In terms of the use of smart citizens, we see very often on the plus side words like citizen science being used, that citizens become sensors within the smart city and they contribute towards how the smart city works. That there will be collaborative design based on this notion of the citizen sensor through activities like participatory geographic information science. These things exist. I'm not doubting that they exist. They exist within frameworks put together by major organisations, though. There is participatory GIS which exists outside of these commercial entities, but it's on a very small scale, and not necessarily linked with a greater vision of a smart city very often either. The discourses are the most scary things, and I could do a whole presentation just on this is what IBM thinks a smart city is, this is what Cisco thinks a smart city is. Though there are presentations like that out there, I suggest you go seek them out if you want to find it. Or just go to their pages and type in smart city and be prepared to be amazed at what is being proposed here. The reality as I see it working within this project is what we have is an immersed citizen, not a digital citizen. You have a citizen that is immersed, or is increasingly becoming immersed in a smart city without necessarily their knowledge or without their consent. They're becoming pushed into a smart city. We're sold the notion that the smart city is better for us, full stop. It will make traffic flow easier. Will it? Give me some evidence to suggest that. Oh, we've got this modelling and we've got these predictions. All right, so you haven't actually done it. Okay, great. Okay, you're living in the city with no choice but to be a data subject, ostensibly. Living in the city makes you a data subject now. If you look at, just walking through Cardiff this morning, from Central Station up here to the Booth building, I just did a quick count of how many CCTV cameras looked at me during that time. I gave up at 100. That was walking past where the barfly used to be. If Arnie knows where that is because he lives in Cardiff, but it's just on the corner of the castle. So it was less than half a mile walking. It's 100. Most of those, it was 79 of them I counted on St Mary Street, which has no traffic down it anymore. So what the hell are they looking at? We sold it to digital solution is the only way. Just to borrow from Kittler and from Mark Hughes as well, we're blind to that which shapes our lives. Right? This technology, by and large, falls into the background of our existence, but it is there as a constant shaping mechanism of what we're doing, but we're completely blind to it. And of course, we're continually surveilling the practice of our lives, and beyond that. And what I mean by beyond that is, even when we're aware of practice in our lives, we're still being we're being surveilled. Even when we're not aware, we're being surveilled as well. I would rather call it, rather than a smart city, a media city, that media shapes our experience, to bring all these things within the concept of media. The digital citizen then is sold to us as empowered, because we have e-governance, readily available offers and access to the city, and more livable, more connected, more life, more energy, more, always more. City will give you more. This is all tied, of course, to a logic of efficiency, which has a long history of study within media studies, within philosophy, a form of technological atheism, to borrow from Neil Postman. Even looking at sort of Norbert Wiener's works on cybernetics, we're looking at human use of human beings to an extent, but a belief system born of purely technological thought. Of course, what we're interested in, what a lot of we've been discussing, is the idea of privacy being gone. And within that, and within these smart city discourses, I just wanted to explore, where did privacy go? Okay? Where has it gone? If privacy's gone, where did it go? Not that it's disappeared, because that sounds completely counterintuitive. Because nobody knows certain things about people. There is always an element of privacy, but that it has been displaced. So that is the argument I want to make here. To borrow from Hannah Arendt, if you look at Hannah Arendt's book, it's chapter 2 of the Human Condition, yeah. The private is a product of the relationship between the historical development of the social and political. This argument is put across in chapter 2 of the Human Condition. We know, for those of us who are familiar with Arendt, the argument that the social is an alliance between people for a purpose, not necessarily viewed as a good thing in antiquity. And the political stands in opposition to the natural association whose centre is the home. And over time, that natural association becomes more prevalent, and the private grows as a sphere in competition with the social and the political, or the public and political. So the rise of the city-state gives rise to a public-political distinction, and then the private is born out of that. Private, is a form of deprivation in this work. It's actually the worst form of being possible. It's deprived. You are not part of the public. You are not part of the political. You have no value if you're in this private state. Christian Fuchs last year said that if you relating this to why there's such an intrusion into the private, if you release people from privation, you release value. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. If you view the private in a particular way, the home life, as an untapped resource, in the process of tapping it in particular ways, and tapping being a very apt word, right? Using digital media more in the private realm and being able to exploit that use of digital media to leverage value in particular ways. This is great, right? Fantastic. If I'm building huge multinational media corporations based on that very notion, effectively. This is how Google, Facebook, Twitter operate, right? So the distinction between the private and public sphere does correspond in Arendt's work to the household and political, and public and private in terms of the family. And what I'm going to argue here is that the intrusion of digital media and continual surveillance of people erodes that particular form of privacy based around the home. The prevailing notion of the private dominated by the home is collapsed in our media landscape. We see it in particular discourses, like the discourse around work-life balance, the discourse around, we can use Dallas audience commodity to look at this. And this is what is being challenged by the incursion of social media, big data, sensors, and computational logic. But again, I want to ask, where's the private gone? Because I still have my private moments and my private thoughts. And I have my private ways of traversing spaces and so on. So what I want to argue here is, and this is really a positional presentation here. This is what I'm going to pursue over the next couple of years within the context of the work I'm doing on the programmable city, is look at privacy as being subject to a rescaling and a repositioning. And what's private and what is remaining of privacy is phenomenological in basis, deliberate and intentional, and practice-based rather than structural. So when I said about a dual articulation, I was actually thinking of this on the way up here, a re-articulation of privacy. What we have is a re-articulation based around privacy being situated differently and chosen rather than spatial. Rather than having spaces of privacy, we now have choices of privacy. We have manners, we have actions, and we have deliberate human intention that underpins private moments, rather than we are given privacy in a particular space which is defined in society. So the notion of the digital citizen then doesn't exclude a notion of a private citizen. The two things will oscillate with one another with regards to how we conduct ourselves in everyday life. They're not equal, one is greater than the other, although we may actually find that one is greater than the other. We may find that the private citizen exists in very marginal moments. And really this work needs to be based around ethnographic, focal practices work, looking at lives to avoid catch-alls and to trace the ongoing trajectories of what privacy means as we are in an increasingly intrusive media world. I think I'm going to finish that.